That morning, New York City seemed grayer than usual. However, my mood was quite the opposite. I, Sarah, was busy adjusting the tie of my husband, Richard, who stood imposing before the large mirror in our master bedroom. This luxurious Upper East Side penthouse had been the silent witness to our happiness during 5 years of marriage, or at least that is what I believed until that moment. "Honey, are you sure you do not want me to pack you something for the road? The drive to Chicago is quite long," I offered gently, patting his broad chest. Richard smiled, a smile that always managed to melt my heart. He kissed my forehead for a long moment. "No need, my love. I am in a hurry. The client in Chicago requested an urgent meeting for tonight. This project is very important for my portfolio. You know, I want to show your father that I can succeed without the shadow of your family's great name." I nodded, feeling proud. Richard was certainly a hard-working husband, though in reality, all the capital for his business. The Cadillac Escalade he drove, and even the designer suits he wore, had all been purchased with my money. Money from the dividends of the company I inherited from my parents, which I now ran, but I never gave it any importance. In a marriage, the wife's assets are also the husband's. Are they not? "Be careful, darling. Let me know when you get to the hotel," I asked. Richard nodded, grabbed the car keys, and left. I watched his back disappear behind the carved oak door. A strange feeling crept over me, a small premonition that I quickly dismissed. Perhaps it was just the nostalgia of being alone for a few days, I thought. That afternoon, after finishing several meetings at the office, my thoughts turned to Lauren, my best friend since college. Yesterday, Lauren had messaged me to say she was hospitalized in a town upstate, Havenwood, after an emergency appendectomy. Lauren was a sweet woman who lived alone in a strange town. I often helped her. Even the small house she occupied in Havenwood was one of my properties, and I let her live there rent-free out of compassion. "Poor Lauren, she must feel so lonely there," I murmured. I looked at my watch. 2 p.m. My afternoon schedule was empty. An idea suddenly sparked. Why not go visit her? Havenwood was only a couple of hours away by car, and there was no traffic. I wanted to surprise her, bring her favorite chicken noodle soup and fresh fruit. Without another thought, I called my personal driver, John. But then I remembered John had taken a sick day, so I decided to drive my beloved red Mercedes myself. The drive to Havenwood was peaceful. The whole way, I imagined Lauren's joyful face when she saw me arrive. I also planned to call Richard at night to tell him I was in Havenwood visiting Lauren. Surely Richard would praise me for being a noble-hearted wife. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I arrived at the parking lot of an elite private hospital in Havenwood. Lauren had told me she was in VIP room 305. I found it a bit strange. Lauren did not work. Where did she get the money or insurance to afford such a luxurious VIP room? But my positive thoughts took over again. Perhaps she had savings, or, well, I would just pay the bill, I decided internally. With a large fruit basket in my hand, I walked through the hospital corridors that smelled of antiseptic but still felt luxurious. My steps echoed softly on the marble floor. My heart beat slowly, not out of fear, but out of excitement to see my friend. The elevator chimed on the 3rd floor. I stepped out and looked for number 305. The room was at the end of the hall, in a secluded and quiet area. When I was about 5 steps from the door, I stopped. The door to room 305 was slightly ajar. Perhaps a nurse had not closed it properly when leaving. I was about to knock, but the sound of laughter from inside stopped my hand in mid-air. "Open your mouth, honey. Here comes the airplane." It was a man's voice. A terribly familiar voice. The voice that had said goodbye to me that very morning to go to Chicago. My blood ran cold. The fruit basket in my hand suddenly felt incredibly heavy. It could not be. My mind denied it. Maybe Richard had stopped by here, but he said he was going to Chicago, in the opposite direction. With trembling hands, I gathered my courage and moved closer to the crack in the door. I held my breath and tried to look inside. The scene I saw destroyed my world in an instant. On the hospital bed, Lauren was sitting up, looking fresh, wearing satin pajamas, not a hospital gown. Her face was not pale at all, and next to her, sitting on the edge of the bed, was Richard. My husband. Richard was feeding Lauren pieces of apple. Richard's gaze, that gaze was the same one he gave me when we were newlyweds, full of love, of adoration. "My little wife is so spoiled," Richard said softly as he wiped a bit of food from the corner of Lauren's lips with his thumb. My wife, my world collapsed. I felt my legs weaken and had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. That word, my wife! "Honey, when are you going to tell Sarah?" Lauren's voice was coquettish, a little whiny. "I am tired of having to hide like this, love. And especially now that I am a few weeks pregnant, our child needs to be acknowledged. Pregnant, our child." I felt as if a bolt of lightning had struck my heart. My eyes burned, tears wanted to fall, but the shock kept me frozen. Richard placed the fruit plate on the bedside table, then took Lauren's hands and kissed them repeatedly. "Be patient, my love. You know my situation. If I ask for a divorce now, I could lose everything. Sarah is smart. All the assets are in her name. The car I drive, this watch, even the capital for the last project, it is all her money. But we have been secretly married for 2 years. Richard, are you going to keep being a parasite to her? You said you were a man with a lot of pride." Lauren pouted. Richard chuckled. "Precisely because of my pride. I need to build up capital first. I am siphoning funds from Sarah's company into my personal account, little by little, through overbilling on phony projects. Be patient. As soon as our savings are enough to buy a new house and start our own business, I will kick Sarah to the curb. Besides, I am sick of pretending to be sweet to her. She is too overbearing, not like you, so submissive." Lauren let out a crystalline laugh. "All right, my Richard is the smartest. Hey, is the house in Havenwood safe? Sarah will not reclaim it." "It is safe, darling. The deed is not in my name yet, but Sarah is a fool. She thinks the house is empty. She does not know that the poor friend she is housing is actually the queen in her husband's heart." They both laughed. A laugh that sounded like the devil's voice in my ears. I backed away slowly. I could not breathe, as if the oxygen in the hallway had been sucked out by their wickedness. I wanted to throw the fruit basket in their faces. I wanted to break down the door, rip out Lauren's hair, and slap Richard until his teeth fell out. "Sarah, if an enemy attacks, do not counterattack with emotion. Attack when they are unprepared, destroy their foundation, and then bring the building down." I reached a trembling hand into my jacket pocket and pulled out my high-end smartphone. I silenced the sound and activated the video recording mode. Carefully, I aimed the camera lens through the crack in the door. I recorded everything: Richard's face kissing Lauren's belly, their conversation about embezzling my company's funds, the confession of their secret marriage. Everything was recorded with crystal clarity in 4K quality, 5 minutes that felt like 5 centuries. With enough evidence, I retreated. I moved away from that door step by step, choking back the sobs that were caught in my throat. Reaching an empty waiting area, I sat down on a cold metal chair. I looked at my phone's screen. The video was safely saved. My tears finally fell, but only for a moment. I wiped them away harshly. They were not worth crying over trash. So all this time, I murmured under my breath, my voice trembling with the rage that was beginning to completely burn away my love. All this time, I have been raising a snake in my own bed, and Lauren, the friend I considered a sister, turned out to be a leech stabbing me in the back. I remembered how Lauren cried on my shoulder, saying she had no money for food, and I gave her a supplementary credit card. I remembered how Richard always used the excuse of overtime when he was probably fooling around with Lauren in the house I bought with my own hard work. The pain slowly transformed into something cold and hard. My heart froze. I opened the mobile banking app on my phone. I had full access to all accounts, including the operations account Richard managed, because I was the primary owner of the company. My fingers danced quickly across the screen. Click, check. Richard's account balance. There was $50,000, money that was supposed to be for project operations. Click, check account activity. There were many transfers to boutiques, jewelry stores, and a gynecologist clinic in Havenwood. "Enjoy your laughter while you can," I hissed harshly. "I will not go into that room now. That would be too easy for them. If I go in now, Richard will just apologize, get on his knees, and Lauren will cry, begging for mercy. That is not enough. I want them to suffer. I want them to feel what it is like to have nothing. I want Richard to go back to being the poor man he was when I found him at a bus stop 5 years ago. And Lauren, I want her to know that playing with fire with Sarah Hayes means getting burned to ashes. I stood up, straightening my jacket. My face was now a mask without expression. My gaze was sharp, fixed on the door of room 305 from a distance. "Enjoy your hospital honeymoon," I whispered, "because tomorrow your hell begins." I left the hospital. Inside the car, I did not start the engine. I immediately called my right-hand man, Hector, the head of IT and security at my company. "Hello, Hector." My voice was cold and authoritative. "Yes, Mrs. Hayes, it is unusual for you to call at this hour. How can I help you?" "Hector, I need your help tonight. It is urgent and confidential." "Of course, ma'am. Your orders are my priority. First, block access to the Platinum credit card Richard has. Second, temporarily freeze the operations account he manages under the pretext of a sudden internal audit. Third, prepare the legal team for an asset recovery." There was a momentary silence on the other end of the line. Hector was smart enough not to ask too many questions. "Understood, ma'am. When should this be executed?" "Now, this very instant. I want the notification to pop up as soon as he tries to make a transaction. Understood? I am on it. One more thing, Hector. Find the best locksmith and several burly security guards. Tomorrow morning, we are paying a visit to the house in Havenwood." "Understood, ma'am." I hung up the phone. The car's engine purred softly as I started it. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. The weak woman who had cried in the hospital hallway was dead. What remained now was Sarah Hayes, the CEO, who knew no mercy. I drove through the streets of Havenwood. I would not be returning to New York City tonight. I would stay at the nearest hotel. I would map out my plan and set the stage for tomorrow's performance. My phone vibrated, a WhatsApp message from Richard. "My love, Richard, honey, I have arrived in Chicago. I am exhausted. I am going to bed now. Kisses. I love you." I laughed cynically reading the message. My fingers calmly typed a reply. "Okay, darling. Rest well. Do not forget to have sweet dreams, because tomorrow you might wake up to a surprising reality. I love you too." I sent the message. A crooked smile formed on my lips. The game had begun. The morning sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains of the hotel suite where I was staying. I woke up not to an alarm, but to the adrenaline still pumping fiercely in my blood. I had barely slept. My eyes were swollen, but my heart was as hard as steel. I picked up the phone from the nightstand. 6 a.m. I had a message from Hector. "Good morning, Mrs. Hayes. Following your instructions, as of 6 a.m. this morning, all financial access in Mr. Richard Miller's name connected to the company and joint accounts has been frozen. Corporate credit card status blocked. Online banking access suspended. I have also located the GPS of the company car. Its position is in the parking lot of Our Lady's Hospital in Havenwood." I smiled slightly. "Good work," I murmured. I got out of bed, ordered breakfast from room service, and then took a hot shower. I had to look perfect today. No puffy eyes, no tired face. I applied slightly heavier makeup than usual, covering the traces of last night's tears. A dark red lipstick was my final choice, a symbol of courage and war. As I enjoyed a glass of orange juice, I imagined what would be happening at the hospital. Richard had probably just woken up, perhaps preparing to spoil his secret wife with a luxurious breakfast. "Eat your fill, Richard," I whispered to my reflection in the mirror, "because after this, you will forget what it feels like to be full." Meanwhile, at the hospital, Richard stretched his stiff muscles. Sleeping on the hospital sofa was not as comfortable as the king-size bed in Sarah's home, but seeing Lauren's peacefully sleeping face made him feel like a hero. "Honey." Lauren stretched coquettishly, her eyes fluttering open. "I am hungry. I am craving some cronuts from that fancy bakery next to the hotel. I am sick of this bland hospital food." Richard smiled, stroking Lauren's hair. "Anything for my princess. Wait here." "Okay. I will go downstairs to sort out the administration to extend your stay in the VIP room, and on the way, I will buy you the cronuts you want. Then I will ask a nurse to bring you some hot water. Thanks, my love. Do not be long, okay? Lauren whined. Richard nodded firmly, straightened his slightly wrinkled shirt, ran his fingers through his hair, and walked out of the room with a confident stride. In his pants pocket, a leather wallet full of platinum and black credit cards was ready to be used. He never worried about the price. He just had to swipe the card and sign. Sarah would pay the bill at the end of the month. He arrived at the administration desk. A clerk greeted him politely. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" "I want to extend the stay for room 305 under the name Lauren Pierce. I also want to upgrade the meal package to premium, and please add the laundry charges," Richard said with the arrogant tone typical of the newly rich. "Of course, sir. One moment while I calculate the total additional deposit." The clerk typed quickly on the computer. "The additional total is $500 for the deposit for the next 3 days and the service upgrade, sir." "Okay, easy." Richard pulled out his black card. The card, that was actually a perk for executives at Sarah's company. He placed it on the counter with an air of superiority. The clerk took the card and ran it through the machine. Richard waited, drumming his fingers on the counter, whistling softly. "Beep, beep," the clerk frowned. She swiped the card again. "Beep, beep, beep." "Excuse me, sir," the clerk said with an awkward expression. "The card has been declined by the system." Richard stopped whistling, his eyebrows furrowed. "What do you mean?" "That card has a limit of hundreds of thousands. It is impossible for it to be declined. Try again." "I have already tried twice, sir." The message says, "Card blocked by issuer. Perhaps you entered the wrong PIN." "I do not use a PIN. It is a signature card. Besides, it is a priority card." Richard started to get angry. His voice rose, causing several people in the waiting area to turn. "Your machine must be broken. Our machine is working perfectly, sir." "Another patient just completed a transaction without any issues," the clerk replied, starting to sound curt. Richard snorted in frustration, opened his wallet again, and pulled out a second card. The gold credit card from his joint account with Sarah. "Use this one." The clerk tried again. A moment of silence. "Beep, beep." "Same thing, sir." "Declined." The message says, "Insufficient funds." Richard's face began to turn red. A cold sweat bead appeared on his temples. His heart pounded. Insufficient funds. Impossible. That account held the monthly operating funds that Sarah had just transferred the day before. "Hey, do not mess with me." "I am a businessman," Richard shouted, trying to hide his panic with anger. "Can you try calling your bank, sir? I only operate the machine." The clerk now looked at him with suspicion, a look that made Richard's pride feel trampled. With trembling hands, Richard picked up his cards, walked away from the counter to find a quiet corner, pulled out his phone, and opened the mobile banking app. Logging in. The screen spun, a load time that seemed to last forever. Then a red notification appeared. "Access denied. Your user ID has been temporarily frozen. Please contact customer service." "Damn it, what is going on?" Richard cursed under his breath. He tried another account. His personal account, the one he used to receive the siphoned funds. Balance, $0. Richard's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. The $50,000 he had seen the previous afternoon had vanished. Zero. Absolutely nothing. Impossible. It cannot be a hack. Richard began to truly panic. His hands shook violently as he held the phone. His mind immediately focused on one name, Sarah. Did Sarah know? No. Impossible. If she knew, she would have confronted me by now. Sarah is emotional. She does not know how to play it cool. This must be a system error from the bank or an audit from the office. Richard tried to calm himself. He had to call Sarah. He had to act. He took a deep breath, adjusting his tone to sound authoritative but slightly confused. My phone rang. The name My Love appeared on the screen. I was sipping a hot tea at that moment. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Hello, darling. Are you up already? How is Chicago?" I greeted him with a fake cheerful tone. Hey, my love." Richard's voice sounded strained. "Yes, I just woke up. Hey, Sarah, I wanted to ask, is there a problem at the office or some surprise audit from the bank?" "No, not that I know of, honey. Everything is running smoothly." "Why do you ask?" I asked innocently. It is just really weird. I was going to pay for, treat a client to breakfast at the hotel, but all my credit cards were declined. The online banking is not working either. You did not accidentally block something in the central system, did you? I let out a small laugh, a laugh that surely made the hairs on Richard's neck stand up without him knowing why. Goodness, honey, why would I block my own husband? Maybe the bank system is down, love. Or maybe you hit your limit. What have you been buying this month? I have not bought anything, just the usual stuff. Richard defended himself quickly. It was so embarrassing with the client. Hey, honey, can you transfer some cash to a friend's account for me? I cannot access mine. Transfer. I drummed my fingers on the table. Well, the company's security token is with Hector, and Hector took a sick day today. He is not answering. I also left my personal token in the safe at home. I am out right now on my way to a spa. Sarah, it is an emergency. Can you not make an effort? I need money now. Richard started to lose control of his emotions. His tone of voice rose. My smile vanished. I stared straight ahead. How dare he yell at me while begging for my own money? Richard, I said coldly, why are you yelling at me? You are the one who went on a business trip without preparing any cash, and you are blaming me. Besides, you are in Chicago dealing with a client. Can the client not cover it for now? Or are you not with a client at all? That question left Richard speechless. A long silence on the other end of the line. Of course I am with the client. What I mean is, it is embarrassing to ask him for a loan. Well, never mind. I will figure it out. You are a wife who cannot be trusted when her husband is in trouble. Click. The call was unilaterally disconnected by Richard. I stared at the dark screen of the phone. A wife who cannot be trusted. I let out a cynical laugh. Just wait until you realize this useless wife is the owner of the oxygen you breathe. In the hospital, Richard slammed his phone against the waiting room sofa. His breathing was ragged. He patted his pockets and wallet, counting the cash he had left. $50 was all the cash he had. Meanwhile, the hospital deposit they were asking for was $500, not to mention Lauren's craving for cronuts. With a defeated posture and his pride shattered, Richard returned to room 305. He entered with a scowl. Where are my cronuts, love? Lauren asked enthusiastically upon seeing Richard, but her smile faded when she saw his empty hands. Hey, why did you not bring anything? Richard sat on the edge of the bed, massaging his temples. The bakery was closed. Honey, that is a lie. It is a 24-hour hotel restaurant. Are you being cheap, or are you just broke? Lauren started to whine, irritated. Her true, demanding nature surfaced when her wishes were not met. It is not that, Lauren. My credit cards have a problem. It seems like the entire banking system is down nationwide. I cannot get any cash. Richard excused himself. He was reluctant to admit he had been cut off. So, what am I supposed to eat? I do not like the hospital soup. Lauren threw a pillow at Richard. Eat what is here. I will look for a loan this afternoon, Richard shouted. The stress made him unintentionally yell at the woman he supposedly loved. Lauren was stunned. Her eyes filled with tears. You are yelling at me. You are so cruel. You used to promise me the world, and now you cannot even buy me some cronuts. The atmosphere in room 305 grew tense. A small fight began to brew. Meanwhile, outside, the real storm was approaching. 10 a.m. I had already checked out of the hotel. My red Mercedes glided through the streets of Havenwood towards a residential area on the outskirts. Behind me, a black minivan followed. Inside were Hector, 2 security guards in black uniforms, and a locksmith. My destination was not the hospital. I would let Richard rot there in his confusion. My destination was the thieves' den, the modern minimalist house in the exclusive residential area where Lauren lived. That house was one of my first real estate properties. I bought it in cash before marrying Richard, and foolishly, out of pity for Lauren, who told me she had been kicked out of her rental apartment, I let her live there. It turned out the place had become their love nest. My car stopped right in front of a tall black gate. The house looked quiet. Of course, its occupants were on a romantic retreat at the hospital. I got out of the car wearing sunglasses. Hector and his team immediately got out and stood behind me. Is that the house, ma'am? Hector asked. Yes, that is my house, tainted by trash, I replied dryly. The neighborhood security guard, seeing our group, approached with an alert expression. Excuse me, ma'am. Can I help you? Who are you? I took off my sunglasses and looked at the guard. I am Sarah Hayes, the legal owner of this house. I want to enter my property. Are you going to stop me? The guard was stunned. He recognized the Hayes name, a family that owned many assets in the area. Oh, excuse me, Mrs. Hayes, but Mrs. Pierce did not mention any visitors. Lauren is just a guest here, sir, and today her stay has ended. I cut him off firmly. I turned to the locksmith. Sir, open the lock. If it is difficult, break it. I will pay for the damages. At your service, ma'am. The sound of a drill and a saw broke the morning silence of the luxurious neighborhood. Neighbors began to peek out of their windows, but I did not care. I stood tall, with my arms crossed. Click. The gate opened. I entered the yard. The lawn was well manicured. Richard's sports motorcycle was parked there. The motorcycle he claimed to have sold a year ago. Lie after lie kept coming to light. We reached the front door. The locksmith went to work again. In a short time, the oak door swung open. The cool air from the air conditioning greeted me, and as I entered the living room, my eyes caught something that made my blood boil again. On the living room wall hung a huge pre-wedding photograph. Richard and Lauren, tenderly embracing with the Eiffel Tower in the background. Richard's business trip to Paris last month, which he supposedly went on alone. Excellent, I hissed. My voice trembled, containing my rage. Hector. Yes, ma'am. Take everything out of this house. Everything. The clothes, the furniture, these disgusting photos. Put it all in a truck or just pile it up in the front yard. I want this house empty before sunset. Understood, ma'am. And where should we send their things? I looked at the photo of Richard's fake smile. Do not send them anywhere. Pile them up in front of the gate to be a spectacle for the neighbors. And as for this photo, I picked up a vase from the table and threw it with all my might at the frame. Crash. The glass of the frame shattered, tearing their happy faces in the photo. Burn it, I added coldly. I walked towards the master bedroom. I was going to take back what was mine and leave them without a roof over their heads when they came home. My phone vibrated again. A message from the bank. Notification of a failed transaction attempt at Our Lady's Hospital for $1,500 with the Platinum credit card. Richard was trying to pay for something expensive, maybe a procedure or just a forced deposit. He was starting to panic. I smiled with satisfaction. Struggle, Richard. This is just the beginning. My steps felt heavy but firm as I entered the master bedroom of that house. An intense scent of Jo Malone's English Pear and Freesia perfume, the same one I used to wear, invaded my nostrils. Apparently, Lauren did not just want to steal my husband. She wanted to be me. The room was messy, with clothes strewn over chairs and makeup remnants on the vanity. In a corner, a large teak wood wardrobe stood imposing. I opened it abruptly. A row of designer handbags greeted my eyes. A Hermes Birkin, a Chanel Classic Flap, a Louis Vuitton Neverfull, bags whose prices were equivalent to that of a small car, perfectly lined up. My heart sank as I recognized a gray Dior saddlebag. It was the bag I had been looking for last month at my home. Richard told me it might have gotten lost in the storage room. Well, it turned out the bag was here, being used by his mistress. Damn you, I muttered under my breath. I pulled out the bags one by one, throwing them on the floor as if they were garbage. Hector, I shouted. Hector rushed in. Yes, ma'am. Load all these bags. They are my property. Take them to my car. Do not mix them with the junk we are throwing in the yard. Understood, ma'am. Once the wardrobe was empty, my eyes fell on a small metal safe hidden at the bottom, covered by a pile of blankets, a digital safe. I knelt in front of it. My heart pounded. What was Richard hiding here? I tried to guess the combination. Richard's date of birth. Error. Lauren's date of birth. I checked her HR data on my phone. Lauren had applied for a job at my office once. I entered the date. Error. Our wedding date. Error. I paused for a moment, trying to think like Richard. Richard was narcissistic, but also sentimental in his own strange way. Or maybe he was just stupid. My hand reached out and I pressed 6 digits, the date they started dating. I remembered that date because I had seen it in a small tattoo on Richard's wrist that he got last month. He said it was just art. Beep, beep, click. The indicator light turned green. The safe door opened slowly. I held my breath. My eyes widened at its contents. It was not just money. Inside the safe were bundles of cash, perhaps about $10,000, but that was not what made my blood boil. On top of the cash were 2 small books, one dark green and one maroon, a secret marriage certificate. My hands trembled as I picked up the documents. I opened them. A photo of Richard and Lauren, side by side against a blue background, smiling broadly. The date of their wedding was listed as 2 years ago. 2 years. A tear fell without permission, landing right on Richard's face in the photo. 2 years of sleeping next to a traitor, 2 years of financing his second wife's life without knowing it. Beneath the certificate, I found a small black notebook, a ledger. I opened it. It contained Richard's neat handwriting. January 2023, cash withdrawal. Havenwood Project 2000, $500, deposited into Lauren's account. Purchase necklace. March 2023, overcharge on catering supplier, office $800. Down payment on car for Lauren's sister. June 2023. Sale of Sarah's diamond ring, supposedly lost. $10,000 for vacation in Ibiza. My breath caught. My chest tightened painfully. My grandmother's ring, lost a year ago. Richard said I probably dropped it while washing my hands at a mall. He even feigned panic while helping me look for it. It turned out he had stolen it. He sold my family's heirloom to fund a vacation for this prostitute. The rage burning inside me turned into a deathly cold. I no longer felt sadness. I felt disgust. I took my phone, photographed every page of the notebook, the secret marriage certificate, and the bundles of cash. This was not just proof of infidelity. It was proof of a crime, embezzlement, theft, and falsification of financial reports. You will not just be ruined, Richard, I whispered to the black notebook. You will rot in prison. I emptied the contents of the safe, putting the money, documents, and some gold jewelry that was there into my work briefcase. When I left the room, the living room was already completely empty. Hector and his team worked incredibly fast. The sofa, the television, the dining table, everything had been taken out. The house was now just an echo of bare walls. Everything is cleared, ma'am, Hector reported. I nodded. Good. Now change all the locks. Chain the gate with the biggest chain you can find. Put a sign at the entrance. For urgent sale. Understood, ma'am. And Lauren's things in the yard. I walked to the porch. On the green lawn, a mountain of trash was now piled up, consisting of Lauren's clothes, shoes, plastic furniture, and cosmetics. Neighbors began to gather behind their fences, whispering and pointing. I looked at the pile. Leave it there. If it rains, let it get wet. If any junk collector wants to take it, go ahead. It is my last act of charity for Lauren. Meanwhile, at Our Lady's Hospital, Richard was sitting in a cafeteria chair with a sour face. In front of him was only a glass of water. His stomach was growling, but the stress had taken his appetite. The administration staff had just called him again. Final notice. Pay the $500 deposit before noon, or Lauren will have to vacate the VIP room. Damn it. Why were none of the cards working? Richard ran his hands through his hair in frustration. He had tried calling the office, but his secretary told him, I am sorry, Mr. Miller. The HR system is down. We cannot process any advances, and Mrs. Hayes is unreachable. Richard knew it was strange, but he refused to believe Sarah was behind all of this. In his eyes, Sarah was a naive, madly in love wife. Sarah would not be capable of this, love. Lauren's voice interrupted his thoughts. Richard turned. Lauren had come down to the cafeteria, pushing her IV stand with difficulty. She was frowning. What is taking so long? You said you were going to get money. The doctor says I need a medication to support the pregnancy that costs $100. I have to buy it now. Richard swallowed hard. $100. In his wallet, he only had $10 left after getting gas. Lauren, be patient. I am trying. My friends are not answering their phones. Richard excused himself. Trying what? You are just sitting there doing nothing. Lauren began to raise her voice. You said you were rich. You said your wife was just a cash cow. Where is the proof? You cannot even buy medicine for your own child. Those words slapped Richard's ego. He looked at the Rolex Submariner on his wrist. It was authentic. A birthday gift from Sarah last year. Its price was around $10,000. Richard gritted his teeth. I have no other choice. Wait here. Do not move, Richard ordered Lauren. Richard rushed out of the hospital. He remembered a second-hand luxury watch shop on a nearby street. He quickened his pace under the scorching sun. Sweat soaked his dress shirt. Arriving at the shop, Richard immediately took off the watch. I want to sell this quick. I need cash, Richard told the owner. A middle-aged man with glasses. The man examined the watch with a magnifying glass. Rolex Submariner. Authentic, still in good condition. Do you have the box and papers, sir? Richard shook his head. I do not have them with me. They are back in New York. I am selling it as is. The man smiled sideways. He knew Richard's position was weak. Well, without papers, the price drops a lot, sir. It could be stolen, you know. I am not a thief. I am a businessman, Richard shouted, offended. It is my watch. Yes, sir, I believe you, but rules are rules. Without papers, I can only offer you $2,000. What? Richard's eyes widened. Are you crazy? Its second-hand value is at least $8,000. That is, if it were complete, sir. Without papers, this is the offer. Take it or leave it. Richard clenched his fists. $2,000 was an insult, but he needed that money right now for the hospital deposit, for Lauren's medicine, for food, and for gas back to New York. Fine, $2,000. Give it to me now, Richard said in a hoarse voice, holding back his rage. 10 minutes later, Richard left the shop with a feeling of emptiness. His wrist felt light without the luxurious watch. The last symbol of his status was gone. He only had $2,000 in his pocket, an amount he would normally spend on a single dinner with clients using Sarah's money. Back at the hospital, Richard proudly threw $500 in cash on the counter. Here is the deposit, paid. The rest is for the medicine, he said arrogantly. The receptionist took the money without expression. All right, sir, we have received it, but I regret to inform you there is additional information from the attending physician. Now that Mrs. Pierce's condition seems to have a small complication, she will need 3 more days of observation. The estimated cost has increased to about $2,000 more. Richard felt like he was going to faint. From the money from the watch sale, he only had $1,500 left. If he paid it all, he would be left with nothing again. Okay, I will pay the rest. The important thing is that she gets treated now. Richard walked back to the VIP room. Upon entering, Lauren was busy on her phone. Richard! Richard! Lauren screamed in panic when she saw him. Her face was ashen, paler than when she was sick. What is wrong? Is your stomach hurting again? Richard asked, concerned. No, it is this. A neighbor from the Havenwood house sent me a video in the neighborhood WhatsApp group. Lauren handed him the phone with trembling hands. Richard snatched it. An amateur video was playing on the screen. The video showed Lauren's house in Havenwood. The gate was wide open. In the front yard, piles of clothes and furniture were stacked like garbage. And most shockingly, a large red sign was staked in front of the gate. Private property under surveillance by the owner, Sarah Hayes. No trespassing, especially mistresses. And in the video, Sarah's red Mercedes could be seen driving away from the scene. Richard's heart stopped for a moment. The phone fell from his hands to the floor. Sarah, Richard murmured, his face as white as a sheet. She knows I am in Havenwood. Richard, those are my things, my bags, my clothes. Why are they throwing them out like trash? Lauren screamed hysterically. You said the house was safe. You said Sarah was stupid. Now I am homeless, Richard. Richard took a step back, bumping into the wall. His legs gave way. The truth hit him like a truck. The blocked bank access, the canceled credit cards, the house raided. Sarah was in Havenwood. It was not a system coincidence. It was war. Richard quickly looked for his own phone. He had to call Sarah. He had to deny it. He had to turn the situation around. Dialing my wife, the phone was answered. "Hello, darling." Sarah's voice was calm, too calm. In the background, Richard could hear the sound of classical music and the soft purr of a car engine. "Sarah, where are you?" Richard shouted without preamble. "I am on my way to New York, honey. Why do you sound so upset?" "Do not lie. You were at the house in Havenwood. You threw out my friend's things. What is the meaning of this?" There was a short, cold laugh on the other end of the line. A laugh that made the hair on Richard's neck stand up. "Ah, so you admit it is your friend's house. You did not tell me you were in Chicago." Checkmate. Richard fell silent. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Richard," Sarah's voice became sharp as a razor. "How does it feel to sell your beloved Rolex at a pawn shop? They gave you a very low price, did they not?" "What a shame. It was a limited edition," Richard stammered. He felt as if he had been stripped naked. Sarah knew everything, every move. "I know everything, Richard. I know about the little airplane game. I know about that bastard child. I know about the secret marriage certificate in the safe, and I know about my grandmother's ring that you sold." Silence. Only Richard's ragged breathing could be heard. "Listen to me carefully, Richard," Sarah continued, her tone filled with power. "Enjoy the $1,500 you have left in your hand, because it is the last money you will ever touch in your life. Do not dare to come back to my home on the Upper East Side. The locks have already been changed, and the security guards have your photo with orders to prohibit your entry." "Sarah, wait, can we talk about this?" "I can explain," Richard pleaded. His tears began to fall out of sheer fear. "Explain it to the judge, Richard. I will see you in the living hell I have just built for you." Click. The connection was cut. Richard slid to the hospital floor. His phone slipped from his grasp. His world went dark. In front of him, Lauren was still screaming hysterically, mourning her discarded designer bags, but Richard no longer heard her. In his ears, only one sentence echoed, "I will see you in the living hell." The atmosphere inside the Cadillac Escalade was silent but tense. The air felt heavy, as if filled with gunpowder about to explode. Richard drove with stiff hands, gripping the steering wheel. His gaze was lost on the highway stretching before him, while his mind was a whirlwind of fear, denial, and the last vestiges of arrogance. Beside him, Lauren sat hugging her knees. Her face was still pale. She had had her IV removed forcefully at her request. They decided to leave the hospital despite the doctor's prohibition. The reason was simple. Their money was running out. Of the sale of Richard's watch, only about $1,300 remained after paying the administrative fees and gas. "Honey, slow down a bit. My stomach hurts with all these bumps," Lauren protested loudly. "Shut up, Lauren. I am thinking." Richard snapped without looking at her. "We have to get to New York before the office closes. I have to go to the headquarters. I have to talk to Sarah before she poisons everyone's minds. Are you sure Sarah will want to see you?" On the phone, she sounded terrifying. "Love," Lauren whispered, starting to get scared. "Sarah is just bluffing. I have known her for 5 years. She is a weak woman who needs a man. She is probably angry right now. If I go, I will apologize. I will kneel at her feet. She will surely give in. At most, I will have to pretend to cry a little," Richard said, trying to convince himself. He let out a hollow laugh. "Besides, this company has also grown thanks to my contribution. The clients trust me, not Sarah. If she fires me, her company will go bankrupt. She needs me. The stupidity and male ego are truly extraordinary." Richard forgot that he was the one who had always needed Sarah's great name to even sit at the negotiating table. 3 hours later, in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, Richard's car turned to enter the luxurious residential complex. His heart pounded as he saw the roof of his opulent penthouse peeking through the trees. That home was his palace, the place where he felt like a king. But as the car approached the 10-foot-high gate, Richard slammed on the brakes. The gate was closed and secured with a huge iron chain. In the security booth was not Mr. Manuel, the kind, elderly guard, but 2 burly men in tight black uniforms and sunglasses. Richard honked insistently. One of the large men stepped out of the booth and calmly approached the car. His face was expressionless. Richard rolled down the window. "Open the gate." "I am the owner of this house," Richard shouted. The man leaned down slightly to see Richard's face and then looked at a photo he was holding. He shook his head. "I am sorry. You are prohibited from entering this area." "What? Are you crazy?" "I am Richard, Mrs. Sarah's husband. Get out of the way or I will run you over," Richard threatened, his face reddening. "Go ahead. If you want to crash into a steel gate, sir, your car will be wrecked and you will be back in the hospital." The man replied calmly. "The owner's instructions, Mrs. Sarah Hayes, are that Mr. Richard and Miss Lauren are forbidden to set foot on this property. This is my house too. It is marital property." The man showed him a photocopy taped to the booth. It was a copy of the prenuptial agreement. According to the legal document, this house is 100% the property of Mrs. Sarah, inherited from her parents. You have no rights. And this, the man pointed to 2 large suitcases on the sidewalk covered in dust, "are your personal effects, sir. Work clothes and underwear. The rest has been confiscated as evidence of embezzlement." Richard stared at the 2 suitcases with glazed eyes. Just that. 5 years of luxury living, and he left with only 2 suitcases of used clothes. "Honey, the neighbors are watching us," Lauren whispered, embarrassed. It was true. Several neighbors' cars passing by slowed down. People saw Richard being held outside his own gate like a beggar. The whispers began, and an immense shame washed over Richard. "Damn it!" Richard slammed the steering wheel. He had no other choice. He could not face those 2 giant guards. "We are going to the office now." Richard turned the wheel sharply, making a U-turn and leaving his palace behind, now closed to him forever. Office building in Midtown Manhattan, 25th floor, headquarters of Hayes Global. Richard entered the lobby with a determined stride. He wore the same shirt from the previous day, wrinkled and smelling of sweat, but he tried to keep his chin up. Lauren followed him with her head down, afraid of being recognized by her former colleagues. Richard headed for the automatic turnstiles, swiped his access card. Beep. Access denied. Richard tried again. Beep. Mr. Miller. A building security guard greeted him. "My card is not working." "Open the gate for me manually," Richard ordered. "I am sorry, Mr. Miller. Your access was revoked by Hayes Global Management this morning. You are not permitted to go up. I am the chief operating officer. I want to see my wife. Get out of my way." Richard tried to force his way through, pushing the guard. A scuffle ensued. Other security guards came to restrain Richard. People in the lobby, employees, visitors, couriers, began to watch the free drama. "Let me go. I want to go up," Richard shouted, struggling. Ding. The VIP elevator door opened. The atmosphere suddenly fell silent. A figure emerged from it, Sarah. She looked stunning in an impeccable white pantsuit that enhanced her slender figure. Her hair was in an elegant bun, and her Christian Louboutin heels clicked firmly on the marble floor. Behind her were Hector and the company's legal team. Sarah approached, stopping 10 feet from Richard, who was being held by 2 guards. Sarah looked him up and down with obvious contempt. "What do you want here, Richard?" "Making a scene in my office." Sarah's voice was calm but echoed in the silent lobby. "Sarah..." Richard broke free from the guards, adjusting his collar, trying to regain his dignity. "Honey, we need to talk. Do not act like a child. Blocking access, changing the locks at home, it is childish. Let us resolve this in my office, okay?" Sarah laughed softly, a cold laugh. "Your office? That office has already been cleaned out. The nameplate with your name was thrown in the trash this morning. You cannot just fire me like this. I have shares here. Shares I gave you for your birthday. Too bad the clause specified that the shares are voided if the recipient commits a crime that harms the company." "And you!" Sarah threw a brown folder at his chest. The folder fell, and its contents scattered across the floor. Photos of the secret marriage, proof of transfers to Lauren's account, evidence of overbilling on phony projects, photos of the black ledger from the Havenwood safe. The observing employees began to whisper loudly. Their eyes widened at the photos. Lauren, who was behind Richard, tried to cover her face with her hair. "You embezzled $250,000 from the company over 2 years to finance this prostitute," Sarah said, pointing at Lauren. "That is a felony, Richard. My legal team already filed a report with the police an hour ago." Richard's face turned waxen. His legs trembled. Sarah, do not joke. Prison. We are husband and wife. Ex-husband, Sarah corrected sharply. The divorce petition has already been filed today, and since the evidence of infidelity and crimes is so overwhelming, I assure you, you will leave this marriage without a cent. No. Richard took a step forward, trying to take Sarah's hand. Sarah, please. I was wrong. It was Lauren who seduced me. I love you, Sarah. For God's sake, Richard! Lauren screamed, not accepting the blame. You were the one who said Sarah was stupid and boring. Do not wash your hands of this. Shut up! Richard yelled at Lauren, and then looked back at Sarah with pleading eyes. Sarah, give me a chance. I will leave Lauren. I will fix everything. Sarah sharply pulled her hand away. Too late. I once loved you because I thought you were a simple, sincere man. It turns out you are just a greedy parasite. Now get out of my sight before the police come to drag you away. Sarah turned around, signaling to Hector. Suddenly, a man in a leather jacket approached. Excuse me, Mr. Miller. I am from the finance company. The Cadillac Escalade out front is registered to Hayes Global. Mrs. Hayes has reported the misappropriation of the vehicle. Where are the keys? It is my company car. You are no longer an employee. The keys, or we call the police right now. Richard was petrified. His pride was being stripped away layer by layer in front of hundreds of eyes. With trembling hands, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the car keys. The man snatched them. Thank you. Sarah, who was already heading to the elevator, stopped for a moment and looked back expressionlessly. Enjoy the walk, Richard. Oh, and be careful on the street. New York is hot without air conditioning. The elevator doors closed, taking the Queen back to her throne. On the floor below, Richard and Lauren were left standing in the middle of the lobby, without a home, without a job, without a car, and without dignity. Honey, Lauren touched his arm. How are we getting back? My suitcases are heavy. Richard looked at Lauren with hatred. How? By bus. Figure it out yourself. I am ruined because of you. Richard walked out of the building with a clumsy gait, dragging his heavy suitcase. The scorching New York sun burned his skin. On the sidewalk, he saw the Escalade he had boasted so much about being towed away. He was now truly alone in the concrete jungle. The money in his wallet was dwindling by the second. And above, from the 25th floor window, Sarah looked down, holding a glass of wine. The first act is over, Sarah murmured. Now it is time to make them devour each other. The midday New York sun is no friend to those on foot, especially not to those who have just fallen from heaven. The sidewalk in front of the luxurious office building seemed to cook the soles of their feet, reflecting the heat of the asphalt mixed with the dust of pollution. Richard stood, paralyzed, at the edge of the road. His dress shirt was now soaked with sweat. Beside him, 2 large suitcases stood stiffly. Lauren was sitting on one of them, massaging her sore feet from wearing high heels, shoes that now seemed ridiculous on a cracked sidewalk. Honey, it is so hot, Lauren complained, fanning her face with her hand. Call a luxury car service. I do not want to get in a regular cab. They smell like smoke. Richard turned slowly, looking at Lauren with eyes reddened by stress. Luxury, he sneered. You think we are on vacation. We are homeless, Lauren. Homeless. Do not yell, Lauren replied, though her voice trembled. I am pregnant with your child. If I get stressed, something could happen to the baby. Do you want to be responsible? Always her weapon, the pregnancy. Richard sighed sharply, restraining the urge to abandon her right there. He took out his phone. The screen was slightly cracked. He opened a ride-sharing app. His fingers hesitated. His digital wallet balance was 0. He had to pay in cash. A premium car to the nearest 3-star hotel would cost $30. An economy car to a dense residential area was $10. Richard chose the cheaper option. No, we are not going to a hotel, he muttered. Then where? Do not tell me we are going to my parents' house in the suburbs. How embarrassing, Richard. Showing up with suitcases in a cheap taxi, Lauren protested. We are looking for a rooming house, Richard decided firmly. We only have about $1,200 left. If we stay in a hotel, it will be gone in a week. We need a cheap monthly place until I find a new job. Lauren's face transformed into a mask of horror. A rooming house, Richard. I have never lived in one in my life. In college, my uncle paid for an apartment for me. Now I am going to degrade myself like this. It is either that or you sleep under a bridge. Richard snapped before dragging the suitcases towards a dented Toyota that had just pulled up. The car ride was silent and torturous. The air conditioning barely worked. The smell of a citrus air freshener made Lauren nauseous. During the ride, Richard frantically searched online portals for cheap rooms for a couple in the Bronx. The options were limited. Richard realized that without a paycheck, without references, and with limited funds, they could not rent an apartment. The choice fell on a rooming house in a narrow alley in a rough neighborhood. 4 Forget-Me-Not Lane, the driver read with a doubtful voice. Sir, I do not think the car can get to the door. The alley is very narrow. Just drop us at the entrance to the alley, Richard replied, resigned. Upon arrival, reality slapped them even harder. They got out at the mouth of a dirty alley. Dark, stagnant water filled the potholes. The smell of sewage mixed with that of fried food from a nearby bar. Richard, are you serious? Lauren covered her nose. Richard no longer cared. His eyes welled up as he looked at the dark passage ahead. Walk, he ordered. Richard dragged the 2 heavy suitcases by himself as Lauren refused to touch them. The wheels of the luxurious suitcases squeaked sadly on the uneven pavement. They became the center of attention, mothers in bathrobes, men playing cards. All eyes were on this strange couple, a man in a wrinkled designer shirt, a woman in a nice dress and designer bag, dragging suitcases through a sordid alley. Excuse me, ma'am, Richard asked a woman hanging laundry. Where is Mrs. Carmen's rooming house? The woman looked him up and down and pointed to a 2-story house with peeling green paint at the end of the alley, the one with the rusty door. They arrived in front of the house. A plywood sign said, Carmen's Rooms, Couples Welcome. Richard knocked on the iron door. A stout, middle-aged woman with rollers in her hair came out. You looking for a room? She asked bluntly. Yes, ma'am. Do you have any available? Richard asked politely, lowering his usual authoritative tone. There is one on the 2nd floor, at the back, no AC, private bathroom, but it is a wreck. The electricity is prepaid, and water is split, $10 a month. The rent is $300 a month. With a $100 deposit, you have to pay everything up front. $300, Lauren exclaimed under her breath. That is what a facial costs me, Richard. So cheap, it must be horrible. Mrs. Carmen glared at her. Hey, girlie, if you want something nice, go to a hotel. This is what I have. Do you want it or not? There is a waiting list. Richard quickly grabbed Lauren's arm. We will take it, ma'am. We will take it. Can we see it? They went up to the 2nd floor via a narrow, rusty iron spiral staircase. The room was 10 by 10 feet. Small, very small for them. The walls were painted a faded blue. There were damp stains on the ceiling. The furniture consisted of a thin foam mattress on the floor, a plastic wardrobe with a crooked door, and a small fan that hummed loudly. The bathroom was even more depressing, a shower with a torn plastic curtain and a cracked, constantly running toilet. Lauren took a step back, holding back her nausea. Richard, I cannot. I swear I cannot. It smells damp. The mattress is so thin. My back will hurt. I am pregnant. Richard looked at the room with a broken heart. This was the lowest point of his life, but he looked at his wallet. Ma'am, here is the money. $400, 1 month's rent, and the deposit. We are moving in right now, Richard said, handing the bills to Mrs. Carmen. Richard, Lauren protested. Shut up, Lauren. Get in, Richard shouted. His voice echoed down the hall. When Mrs. Carmen left, Richard slammed the door shut, took off his tie, threw it on the floor, and collapsed onto the hard mattress. Lauren was still standing by the door, sobbing. You are so cruel. Why has our life become like this? Sarah. It is all Sarah's fault. Sarah's fault. Richard laughed cynically, a laugh that sounded like madness. He looked at the moldy ceiling. Yes, Sarah is brilliant. She did not just take our money, she took our dignity, put us in this rat hole so we would devour each other. Meanwhile, back on the Upper East Side, Sarah was sitting in her cool, fragrant office. In front of her, Hector presented the latest report. Day 1 surveillance report, ma'am, Hector said. Sarah sipped her chamomile tea. Read it to me. Targets Richard and Lauren were seen checking into a cheap rooming house in the Bronx around 3 p.m. Room without air conditioning. Densely populated environment. Sarah smiled slightly. The Bronx. That area has traffic jams. It is hot and noisy, an excellent choice for training patients. Regarding the employment blacklist, Hector continued, I have already discreetly spread information to the HR network of competing companies and business partners. The rumor is they are candidates with legal problems, embezzlement, and serious ethical violations. It is almost certain that no reputable company will dare to hire Mr. Miller. Good. Also make sure they cannot access online loans. Their data is already on the credit watch list for the unpaid cards, right? Yes, ma'am. His credit score is disastrous. Sarah put down her teacup, stood up, and walked to the large window overlooking her pristine swimming pool. Hector, do you know what hurts an arrogant person the most? Sarah asked without turning. Losing their fortune, ma'am. No, Sarah replied softly. What hurts the most is hope. The hope that they can still get up when we have already cut off their legs. Let them hope that tomorrow will be better and then destroy that hope again the next day. I understand, ma'am. Any additional instructions? Send them a welcome gift to their new rooming house, a food package, but make sure the contents are something that reminds them of their past, but with an insulting quality. You mean we should send them 2 servings of chicken noodle soup, but only with the broth and noodles, no chicken or vegetables. And on the note, we write, diet menu for the new couple, sent anonymously by a delivery service. Hector smiled slightly, a smile of admiration and fear for his boss. At your service, it will be done immediately. The first night in their new home, at 8 p.m., loud music from the neighbor's room blared through the thin walls. The air in the room was suffocating and humid. The small fan only moved the hot air around. Richard lay on his back, staring at the dusty blades. His stomach was rumbling. They had not eaten since noon. Honey, I am hungry, Lauren moaned. She was facing away from him, curled up. Then go buy food. There are plenty of places at the entrance to the alley, Richard replied brusquely. I do not want to go out. There were some weird guys looking at me earlier. You go, Lauren complained. Richard snorted, got up, and grabbed his wallet. He had about $800 left. What do you want to eat? He asked sharply. I am craving sushi, or at least a pizza. Richard looked at her in disbelief. Are you crazy? A serving of sushi costs what we need to eat for a week here. Be realistic, Lauren. We are having kebabs. I do not want street food. It is disgusting. Think about our baby. Lauren started to cry again. When you were with Sarah, you bought her expensive food. With me, you are a cheapskate. Sarah had her own money. You are just a parasite, Richard shouted. His emotion exploded. Lauren fell silent, stunned. Richard took a deep breath. I will buy you something decent, but not sushi. We will have fried chicken from a chain nearby. Richard left, slamming the door. In the narrow alley, he walked with his head down. He felt like everyone was watching him. When he returned with a bag of fried chicken, he saw a food package hanging on his doorknob. He frowned, took the bag. It smelled like homemade food. There was a note. He read it under the dim light of the hallway. Diet menu for the new couple, from an old friend who cares. Richard's heart pounded. He recognized the handwriting on the note. It was Hector's handwriting, but dictated by Sarah. He opened the package with trembling hands. Indeed, inside was only a watery broth with a few noodles, no meat, no vegetables, nothing substantial. It was a humiliation, a symbolic message. You only deserve to eat leftovers. Richard crushed the container. The broth spilled onto the hallway floor. His breathing was ragged. Sarah, you are the devil, he growled. He entered the room with a grim face. Lauren, seeing that he brought nothing but an angry face, protested. Where is my food? Eat air, Richard snapped. He threw the bag of fried chicken at her. Eat that and do not complain anymore. That night they ate in silence. Lauren ate the chicken while crying. Richard ate with a vacant stare, filled with vengeance. Outside, the city noises became their dreary lullaby. The next day, financial reality began to haunt Richard. He got up early, took a cold shower, and put on the best shirt he had left. "Where are you going?" Lauren asked. "To look for a job? To ask for a loan?" Richard replied. "Stay here. Do not spend money. Do not turn on the lights." Richard went to a print shop to print his resume, his first target his best friend, David. David was a business partner to whom Richard often gave projects from Sarah's company. "Hey, Richard, what is up? Strange for you to call so early." David's voice sounded cheerful. "David, I need help. I have a little family problem. I need a loan, or if you have any freelance projects, I am available." There was a silence. David's cheerfulness vanished. "Wow, man, I heard some rumors. Did you have trouble with Mrs. Hayes?" "It is not trouble, just a misunderstanding. I will be back soon, but I need cash now," Richard lied. "I am really sorry, Richard. It is not that I do not want to help you, but this morning we received an internal memo. All suppliers are prohibited from doing business with Richard Miller due to a matter of fraud and embezzlement. If I help you, my company could lose the contract with the Hayes Group, and you know that contract is 60% of my revenue." Richard fell silent. He gripped the phone tightly. Sarah had really closed all the doors on him. "David, we have been friends since college. I need it for food." "I am sorry, Richard. I have a family to feed. I cannot risk it. Good luck." Click. They hung up. Richard called a second friend, a third, a fourth. The answer was the same. At noon, Richard sat dejectedly on a park bench. He had spent $10 on calls for nothing. He saw the tall buildings of Midtown in the distance. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. A WhatsApp message from an unknown number. A photo of Richard sitting thoughtfully on the park bench, taken from a distance. Then a text message. "You look tired. Honey, the administrative assistant position at our branch is still open. If you are interested, the salary is minimum wage, but it is enough to buy milk for the baby. Call HR if you want to swallow your pride." Richard threw the phone onto the grass. He screamed with all his might. He did not care if people looked at him like a madman. His shame was gone. Only a dense despair remained. He knew Sarah was watching him. Sarah was enjoying every second of his suffering. Back at the rooming house in the afternoon, Lauren was bored to death. The internet signal was terrible. She craved something fresh, fruit, or a smoothie. She left the room. Downstairs, Mrs. Carmen was watching TV at full volume. She went out into the alley. She saw a fruit stand surrounded by flies. It disgusted her even more. On her way back, she saw a small cosmetics shop. Her eyes lit up. She had run out of face wash. She went in. The display window had cheap products, no La Mer or Sisley. "Do you have a face wash for sensitive skin?" Lauren asked. The shopkeeper offered her a pink plastic bottle. "This one is very good. Only $3. Lauren rolled her eyes. $3. Her face wash cost $100, but her face felt sticky. She rummaged through her purse. She had $5 left from the money Richard gave her. She bought it. In the room, she washed her face in the smelly bathroom. As she applied the cheap soap, she felt a sting. Heat. "Ah!" Lauren screamed. She rinsed quickly. The skin on her face turned red and broke out in hives. "My face. What is happening to my face?" she screamed hysterically. The water there was not suitable for her skin, which was used to clinic treatments, and the cheap soap probably contained harsh ingredients. Richard arrived as Lauren was crying loudly in front of the mirror. "What is it now?" Richard shouted, tired after a day of rejections. "Look, Richard, my face is ruined. The water here is dirty. The soap is terrible. I want to see a dermatologist. Ask Sarah for money or sell a kidney, but do something. I do not want to be ugly." Richard looked at Lauren's red, swollen face. Instead of compassion, he felt nausea. Dermatologist. Richard laughed bitterly. "Listen, Lauren, tomorrow we do not know if we will have enough to eat, and you are worried about your face, useless husband." Lauren threw the soap bottle at him. "I regret secretly marrying you. If I had known, I would have stayed, mister." Woody's mistress. Slap. A loud slap landed on Lauren's cheek. Silence. Lauren touched her cheek with wide eyes. Richard stood there, breathing heavily. His trembling hand had just hit a pregnant woman. But Lauren's words had just destroyed the last remnants of his male ego. Do not ever mention another man in front of me again. I lost everything for you. My fortune, my career, my perfect legal wife. For you, a piece of trash like you." Richard turned, grabbed a pillow, and left the room. "Where are you going, Richard?" Lauren screamed. "To sleep outside. I am sick of looking at your face." Richard slammed the door again, leaving Lauren crying alone in the narrow room, with a ruined face and a broken heart. In the dark hallway, Richard curled up on some newspapers, trying to sleep surrounded by mosquitoes, lamenting his fate. And far away, on a security camera screen, Sarah smiled with satisfaction. "The isolation phase is over," Sarah murmured. "Next phase, hunger." 3 weeks had passed since Richard and Lauren were expelled from their paradise. 3 weeks that felt like 3 centuries. The rooming house room now seemed even smaller and more suffocating. The air was stale. A pile of dirty laundry was accumulating in a corner. Richard sat on the edge of the sagging mattress. He was thinner, his cheekbones prominent. His designer shirts had been sold at a flea market. Now he only wore a basic t-shirt and shorts. "Honey." Lauren's voice was weak from under the blanket. Richard turned. Lauren's condition was much worse. Her once flawless face was now covered in inflamed red marks. The infection had turned into small, pus-filled boils. "What?" Richard replied in a hoarse voice. "My stomach hurts a lot, Richard. Cramps, and my face burns. It itches like it is on fire. Hold on. I am thinking." Richard cut her off. "Thinking about what?" "We need a doctor. I am out of ointment." Lauren started to cry. "Money. Where do I get the money, Lauren? We are broke. We have $5 left in our wallet. That is only enough for 1 day's food." The money from the watch sale and the cash had evaporated on rent, Lauren's medicines, and her still extravagant lifestyle during the first week. "Sell something else of yours. Your leather shoes." "I already sold them to pay for the electricity," Richard snapped. Silence. Richard looked at his left ring finger. One last thing still shone there, his wedding ring. The platinum band with a small diamond. The symbol of his sacred bond with Sarah. The Sarah he betrayed. He tried to take the ring off. It was difficult. Finally, the ring came off, leaving a white mark on his skin. "I will be back in a moment." Richard got up. "Honey, buy me something to eat on your way back, please." Richard did not answer, slammed the door, and went out into the New York heat. At a jewelry store, Richard placed the ring on the glass counter with a trembling hand. "The papers," the jeweler asked. "I do not have them." "I lost them in the move," Richard lied. "Well, it is a nice piece. Platinum, European diamond. But without papers, I cannot pay much. $200. I will melt it down." Richard stared at him. "It cost me $2,500. That is the retail price. The resale price is low, especially without papers. Do you want it or not?" Richard clenched his fist. $200 was a humiliation, but Lauren's festering face and his own empty stomach came to mind. All right, $200 in cash. Now, Richard left the jewelry store with the money. He felt empty. His last link to Sarah had been sold to feed his mistress. He bought a generic antibiotic ointment and prenatal vitamins. Then he bought 2 daily specials. He wanted to eat a little better today. Arriving at the rooming house, he fed Lauren, who was lying weakly. "Honey, how much money do we have left?" Lauren asked. "About $180. Enough for 2 weeks if we save, but next month we have to pay for water. And you are not working? Are you just going to be a bum?" The question stabbed Richard. Hundreds of resumes sent. No response. Richard Miller's name was blacklisted thanks to Sarah's network. "I am working tomorrow," Richard said suddenly. "Doing what?" "As a director again." Lauren's eyes lit up. "You will see." The next morning, Richard stood in front of a construction site. The cement dust and the noise of concrete mixers greeted him. He wore clothes bought at a flea market. He approached the foreman. "You want to work? You have an office worker's body. You will not last. I need the money, boss. I will do anything. Carry cement, mix sand, whatever. As long as I get paid daily," Richard pleaded. The director's arrogance was gone. "All right. We need a laborer to carry buckets of cement mix up to the third floor all day. $50 a day. Lunch is included. $50. It used to be the price of a coffee and a croissant. Now it was the price of his back for an entire day. I will take it, boss. Richard's hell began. The first hour, he felt like his arms would break. The bucket of cement weighed a ton. He had to go up and down makeshift ladders with his legs trembling. Hey, faster. The mason is waiting, someone shouted from above. His once soft hands began to blister. At noon, during the break, Richard sat on a pile of bricks. His body was wrecked. He looked at his lunch, rice, lentils, and a piece of stale bread. He ate it with his cement-dirty hands. Hunger did not let him think about hygiene. As he ate, a luxurious black sedan drove slowly past the construction site. The back window was slightly open. Richard choked. Inside the car sat Sarah. His wife, talking on the phone, looked serious but beautiful and well-groomed. The car was only 15 feet from where Richard was sitting on the ground like a beggar. Richard quickly turned, hiding his face. Overwhelming shame hit him. "Do not see me! Do not see me!" his mind screamed. The car drove past. Sarah did not turn. To her, the construction workers were just part of the urban landscape. That afternoon, Richard returned home with his body aching all over. In his pocket were a wrinkled $50. He entered the room. "Why so late? Where is my dinner?" Lauren shouted. Richard threw the bill on the floor. "There is your money. Buy it yourself." He collapsed onto the mattress. Lauren picked up the bill with disgust. "Only $50. What did you work as to earn this pittance?" "I am a laborer, Lauren, a construction laborer." "Happy now?" Silence. Lauren was speechless. A laborer. My husband. A laborer. How embarrassing. What if my friends find out? What friends? Richard whispered with bitterness. "The high society ones who blocked you or the ones who laugh at us on WhatsApp." Lauren fell silent and started to cry again. "I cannot live like this, Richard. I want to go back to my old life. Enjoy it, Lauren. This is the paradise we built on Sarah's tears. Enjoy every second of it." Richard fell asleep from exhaustion. Meanwhile, in a luxurious restaurant, Sarah was having dinner with her lawyer. The divorce proceedings are underway. Mrs. Hayes. The first summons was sent to Mr. Miller's address, but of course, it was returned. "We will send a process server to locate him." "No need, Mr. Attorney," Sarah smiled. "I know exactly where he is." Sarah showed him a photo taken that afternoon. The photo of a dirty, defeated Richard carrying cement. The lawyer shook his head. What a swift fall. From director to laborer in less than a month. That is what you call instant karma. But this is not over. $50 a day will not be enough for Lauren's delivery, which will soon require medical attention. When that happens, Richard will do something desperate, and when he does, that is when we will make sure he ends up behind bars. Back at the rooming house at midnight, Lauren woke up with a sharp pain in her abdomen. It was not a normal cramp. "Richard, Richard," she shook her husband's body. "Richard, it hurts. There is blood," she screamed hysterically upon seeing a fresh blood stain on the sheet. Richard woke up with a start. "What? Blood, Richard? The baby?" Lauren cried out in pain. Richard panicked. He knew it was a bad sign. "To the hospital, now." Richard picked Lauren up in his arms. He ran down the stairs. In the deserted alley, there were no taxis. "Help, please!" he shouted. A neighbor with a motorcycle and sidecar came out. "My wife is bleeding. Take us to the nearest hospital, please." Inside the rattling vehicle, Richard held Lauren, who was starting to lose consciousness. Arriving at the public hospital's emergency room, the nurses took Lauren away. Richard was stopped at administration. "Patient's family. Do you have insurance?" "No." "Then you need a deposit. Minimum of $3,000 for a D&C or admission for hemorrhaging. $3,000. Richard's knees buckled. In his pocket, he only had $100 left. "I only have $100, ma'am. Please, treat her first. It is a human life." "I am sorry, sir. Those are the rules. Find the rest of the money. In the meantime, we will stabilize the patient in the hallway." Richard backed away. He saw Lauren on a gurney in a crowded hallway, groaning in pain without serious attention. He needed $2,900 more. Now, he left the hospital. His mind was blank, his heart dark. Across the street, he saw a 24-hour convenience store, empty, just a young cashier with a sleepy look. The devil whispered a crazy idea to him, an idea that would turn him from poor to criminal. Richard picked up a brick from the ground, crossed the street, heading for the store. "Give me the money, fast!" Richard shouted, his voice breaking. He waved the brick with a trembling hand. The cashier screamed, backing away in fear. "I need the money. My wife is dying. Quick, put it in a bag." The terrified girl emptied the cash from the register. Richard snatched the bag, but before he could turn around, the automatic door opened. 2 police officers entered, pointing their guns at him. Behind them stood Hector with an impassive face, holding a phone. Sarah had placed him under 24-hour surveillance. "Hands up." "Drop the weapon!" a cop shouted. Richard froze. The brick fell from his hand. "I just wanted to help my wife," he moaned as they threw him to the ground and handcuffed him. At the same time, in the hospital, Lauren was waiting. No one was taking her to the operating room. Richard was not coming back with the money. A nurse approached, but with bad news. "Ma'am, your husband has just been arrested for attempting to rob a store." Lauren's world went dark. The stress triggered the final contraction. Her body convulsed. The fetus, her only hope to tie Richard down, was lost that night. When she woke up in the morning, she saw her reflection. The skin infection had worsened. Her beautiful face was now full of purulent scars that would be permanent. Her beauty, her main asset, was gone. 2 days later, at the police station, Richard sat in the interrogation room. He wore an orange prison jumpsuit. The door opened. A luxury perfume filled the room. It was Sarah, elegant, unattainable. She sat across from him. "Sarah, please, help me. Drop the charges. I did it for Lauren. She was bleeding." Sarah looked at him without emotion. "Lauren has already been discharged from the hospital," she said calmly. "She lost the baby. Her parents in her hometown refused to take her in because of the shame. Now she wanders the streets with a ruined face. She has not even come to see you." Richard broke down in tears. "I am sorry, Sarah. I regret everything. I want to come back to you." Sarah laughed softly. "Come back. Do you think this is a recycling center?" Sarah placed a folder on the table. "It is the divorce petition. Sign it. You will face multiple charges: embezzlement, theft, and armed robbery. You are looking at least 10 years in prison." "Sarah, how could you?" "I was your husband. Ex-husband," Sarah corrected. She leaned in and whispered in his ear, "Enjoy prison. It is the home you built for yourself with the bricks of your own greed. Do not wait for me, because to me, you are already dead." Sarah turned and left without looking back, leaving Richard screaming her name until the guards took him back to his cell. 3 years later, in New York City, Sarah was leaving her imposing office building. She had just won the Entrepreneur of the Year award. She smiled and got into her new Mercedes. At a red light, Sarah's car stopped. On the sidewalk, amidst the dust and fumes, a thin woman with a scarred face and ragged clothes was begging for change. It was Lauren. And not far from there, behind the high walls of Rikers Island, a thin inmate was cleaning the pavilion's bathrooms. It was Richard. He had become an errand boy for other inmates in exchange for a cigarette. The luxurious car accelerated, leaving a rotten past behind for a bright future. The Queen was back on her throne, alone, but in complete control of her life.